Hello everyone. Welcome to October 2021 edition of Nitya Roundup. In this edition, we'll be covering all the updates that took place in September 2021. September was a very happening month for indirect tax updates, and we'll take you through all those updates in this roundup. So first and foremost, we'll cover up the recent changes. We'll also be talking about the news in the past month on indirect tax front. We'll be dealing with some of the key judicial pronouncements that took place in the last month. And we'll also be telling you about the way forward on some of the key aspects which emanate from the last month's updates. Also, in the end, we'll take up roundup question answer round. One important aspect is that in last month we also had a GST Council meeting with for which we already had one webinar, a special webinar. So we'll provide you a link for that as well. So in this webinar, in this roundup, we will not be covering all the changes of 45th GST Council meeting. For that, you can go to our YouTube link, which we'll provide in this roundup, and you can have a look at that webinar. So first and foremost is that, as we all know, that because of COVID, Supreme Court issued certain directions for extending the time period of limitation because COVID did not permit people to go out, and therefore an order was passed, suo motu order was passed by the Honorable Supreme Court. Now, after the second wave came, there was a restoration of the order on March 23rd, 2020. Now, thereafter, again, once the normalcy was achieved, by order dated 23rd September 2021, Supreme Court restored the earlier order of 8th March 2021. And now what they have done is that all the limitation period from 15th March 2020 to October 2nd, 2021 will stand excluded while computing any limitation. Secondly, whether limitation is available or if it is prescribed, which is less than 90 days, then also in all such cases, Supreme Court has allowed 90 days time with effect from October 3rd, 2021 for the purpose of limitation. This effectively means that you have time until 31st December 2021. However, if the limitation available is more than 90 days in the any existing law, then that extended limitation would apply with effect from 3rd October 2021. So this is the link that we were talking about for the 45th GST Council meeting. So you can go to our YouTube channel and you can view our webinar on demystifying 45th GST Council meeting. This covers all the updates related to rate changes, exemptions, different circulars that came together with the 45th GST Council meeting.
Now coming to the next change, this is regarding to the refund of tax which are paid under the incorrect head. So there were ambiguities regarding whether the tax when paid under a wrong head, can a refund be filed? If yes, then what should be the procedure? What should be the time limit? So thankfully, the government has now clarified and issued a notification through which they inserted Sub-Rule 1A under Rule 89, wherein they have prescribed a time limit to file refund under Section 77 and Section 19 of IGST Act. So as per the Sub-Rule 1A of Rule 89, the time limit will be if, say, the refund say the tax under the correct head has been paid post amendment, then the time limit shall be 2 years from the date of payment of correct head. But say if the tax has been paid before this amendment, then what should be the time limit? It will be 2 years from the issuance of this notification, which is September 24th, 2021. Please note that No refund shall be allowed if the tax has already been adjusted through GST credit notes. Also, if we read section 77, it says that refund shall be allowed if a transaction subsequently held to be the otherwise. Now again there were confusions. What does this phrase subsequently held means? Will it only cover situations wherein the department itself finds out such mistake during any proceedings, or will it cover the situations wherein taxpayer himself find out the same? So thankfully the government has again clarified in a positive way by covering both the scenarios. So the government clarified that subsequently held will cover both the situations wherein taxpayer itself or say department in any of the proceedings find that the tax has been wrongly paid. Now coming to the next very important instruction that has been issued to the GST authorities by CBIC is that the GST authorities has been instructed to issue the SCNs, show cause notices within the time-bound manner. So as we all know that the dates of annual returns for few financial years have already lapsed, and in order to have a smooth adjudication process within the prescribed time limits, the CBIC has instructed the GST authorities, and the last date would be like for period 17-18, the last date of annual return was February 5th or 7th of 2020, basis state-wise. Now here the last date of issuance of SCN under section 73, which covers the normal period, would be November 5th or 7th of 2022. Under section 74, it will be August 5th or 7th of 2024. For financial year 18-19, the last date of annual return was December 31, 2020, and the SCN issuance date would be September 30, 2023. For section 74, it will be June 30, 2025. For financial year 1920, the last date of SCN issuance under 73 will be December 31, 2023. And for 74 section, it will be September 30, 2025.
Thank you, Parul. I'll just add one point there, that what section 73 subsection 10 prescribes is that the show cause notice must be issued 3 months prior to, at least 3 months prior to completion of 3 years from the relevant date. So these dates which have been mentioned in the third column, those are the dates which are 3 months prior to completion of 3 years. Likewise, in section 74 subsection 10, it prescribes that show cause notice for extended period must be issued at least 6 months prior to completion of 5-year extended period from the relevant date. So the last column, the dates are 6 months prior to completion of 5 years from the relevant date for each of the financial years. Thank you, Parul. So next, the foreign trade side, there have been several developments, especially industry, the exporters of services have been waiting for notification under the services export from India scheme. Now, till financial year 18-19, notifications were issued, people filed claims, they got certain claims fully, completely, whatever, but they did get those claims. For financial year 19-20, that notification was awaited, and government time and again promised that yes, they will issue a notification. Now, also important point is that for the earlier years, right from entire FTP 15 to 20, we have seen that there were certain services. There was a list in Annexure D, which provided a list of services on export of which SEIS benefit was available. The rate of SEIS was also known. And in fact, that rate was enhanced by 2% in 2017. Also, there was no capping. So exporter community always believed that the same rates and all those services would continue and there will be no cap. They exported their services in FY 19-20. There was no announcement from government prior to the exports having taken place that there will be any reduction in rate or any capping or that certain services will become ineligible as export for the purpose of SEIS. However, on 23rd of September 2021, notification 29 was issued by DGFT, and this notification completely took away the important right, a very, very critical right that the exporters of services had. So it reduced the rate of SEIS benefit by 2%. It put a cap of 5 crore rupees per IEC, per importer exporter code holder. Lastly, what it also did is that it reduced the services on export of which SEIS benefit could be claimed. So it introduced a new Annexure X, and they introduced certain services, and they said that only these services will be eligible. Rest of the services which were earlier, and very important services like management consultancy, like technical testing analysis, so where the major chunk of export of services was taking place, these were deleted from that list. Now the question is, because it will reduce the SEIS benefit considerably, and for certain industry it will completely knock off, because their services are, if they are falling under management consultancy or technical testing analysis, they would not be eligible for SEIS benefit. And this amendment or this notification has come only on September 23rd, and it is applicable for financial year 1920 when the exports took place. So giving this retrospective effect and taking away the valuable right, can it be challenged? And how it can be challenged? For this, we rolled out a poll that whether it can be challenged, and 60%, almost 2/3 respondents answered in favor that yes, this kind of capping or reduction of benefit and excluding categories of services can be challenged. We also believe that it can be challenged. And the basis of challenge is that there is a legitimate expectation that the exporter of service has from the government, that he will get that benefit from the government, SEIS benefit. They factor the SEIS benefit in their pricing of services. Secondly, this is also discriminatory insofar as there is a capping of 5 crore rupees. So the small exporters definitely do get, and whose services get covered in this notification, they will get the benefit. But what about the large exporter of services who bring the maximum foreign exchange, who do all their work of export, but they have been prevented from getting benefit in excess of 5 crore? And if their services fall in the excluded list, then they will not get any benefit whatsoever. So we also believe that yes, the if SEIS claim has been hampered, or you are not eligible because of exclusion of the any your service, export service, then you must explore challenging this notification before the writ court.
Indeed, DK. Rather, the same thing has happened for MEIS.
Yes, of course. So MEIS also similar thing happened, and instead of they retrospectively reduced and they put a cap and everything. Definitely, I agree.
So as DK mentioned, the benefits under SEIS has already been rolled out. So it's important for the exporters to know the last date for submission of application. Please note that the last date of submission of applications is December 31st, 2021. No late cut is available post December 31st, 2021. So if you think we'll file applications post the date, then it's not possible. Now, kindly note that for the MEIS scheme, if the period of export is falling between July 2018 to March 2019, then the applications can be filed with 10% late cut. If it's April 2019 to March 2020, no late cut. April 2020 to December 2020, again, no late cut. As far as SEIS scheme is considered, for April 18 to March 19, 5% late cut shall apply. And for April 2019 to March 2020, no late cut. Now coming to the again interesting scheme which was being notified few months back, the RoDTEP scheme. Please, in the recent past month, as DK has already explained how the government were super active while issuing notifications and circulars. So in this regard also, the ROTEP scheme, the government has issued various notifications along with circular, wherein they have prescribed a procedure, a detailed procedure, how the script can be generated, along with few criteria which they have mentioned through the notifications. So the first point to note is that the exporters must declare their intent on the shipping bill or bill of export, showing their intention of availing this ROTEP benefit. The ROTEP benefit will be eligible only if the exports have been made through EDI ports. The realization of sale proceeds is a must within the time limit prescribed as per FEMA. If the exports are made to Nepal, Bhutan, and Myanmar, then sale proceeds realized against irrevocable letter of credit in freely convertible exchange is a must. Again, the cancellation and suspension of e-scripts, the power stays with the government in cases where there is a contravention of any provisions. Now, they have also issued electronic duty credit ledger regulations wherein they have prescribed a proper process through which the scripts have to be generated. So exporters have to make a declaration in their shipping bill or bill of export. Then they have to generate scrolls for the duty credit. And these generation of scrolls will be done on the automated system. Now, separate scrolls has to be generated for separate schemes. Like there are various schemes, ROTEP scheme, ROSCTL scheme. So for each scheme, separate scrolls will be generated. Now the scroll details will include shipping bill details or say bill of export details, duty credit amount, and the generation date. Now what will be the duty credit amount? It will be the lesser of declared FOB value or up to 1.5 times the market price of goods. Post the generation of scrolls, these scrolls need to be converted into e-scripts. Rather, I should say the duty credit amount need to be converted into e-scripts. Now, these e-scripts shall be generated custom station-wise. And this generation, this conversion basically has to be done within 1 year from the date of scroll generation. If the same is not done within 1 year, then automatic conversion will be done. Please note that each e-script shall be valid for 1 year from the date of its conversion. Post 1 year, they will automatically lapse. Now, the e-script can be utilized only for the payment of basic customs duty, and these e-scripts are transferable to the exporters having import-export code. So, this shall be the procedure under the ROTEP scheme. Now, coming to some other changes pertaining to customs and FTP. So, the much awaited new FTP policy has again been extended to March 2022. As far as time limit for extension of fulfillment of export obligations are considered under advance authorization and EPCG scheme, the same can be extended without payment of composition fee if the period is expiring between August 2020 to July 2021. The same can be extended to December 2021, but this is with the condition of fulfilling 5% additional export obligations. Also, the exporters have the option to extend this time without payment of, with the payment of composition fee. And if we are paying the composition fee, then no additional 5% EU obligation will be there. Recently, the government issued a notification by which they updated that import-export code, which are not updated on the IceGate portal, will get deactivated. Now the same process has been initiated. So IEC, that is your import-export code, which is not updated after January 1, 2005, will be deactivated, and this procedure, this process has been effective from October 6, 2021. Now coming to some recent news. We all know that post the announcement of ROTEP scheme, rates and everything, special economic zones and export-oriented units were disheartened as they were kept outside the ambit of ROTEP scheme. But now the authorities are considering to cover those units as well. So we can expect by the next financial year, they might get covered under the ROTEP scheme. The ministry, the finance ministry has set up a panel for reviewing the GST exemption list and to identify the GST rates, to consolidate the rates, lower the slabs, and to identify the evasion sources. In one of the case, in the case of Ravindranath Bapte, the Supreme Court has announced the relief by saying that no vicarious activities or liabilities can be initiated against the top management if any offense has been committed by the company and not the top management. There has to be a special allegation or say specific allegation against the top management. Only then prosecutions can be executed against them. One very important news is that the government has recently notified the PLI scheme, Product Linked Incentive Scheme for the auto sector. So eligible candidates are requested to explore the available benefits and increase their investments in the auto sector. With this, I request TK to take the session forward.
Thank you, Parul, for such important information and all the updates. So one of the key provision is Section 54.3, and I'm sure everybody would have read in the news about Supreme Court delivering a judgment relating to inverted duty structure. Now, what Section 54.3? Section 54 deals with the refunds, and 54.3 specifically deals with cases of refund of unutilized input tax credit. And there is a proviso in Section 54.3, which in particular says that no refund of unutilized ITC shall be applicable or allowed, except in cases where credit has accumulated on account of rate of tax on inputs being higher than rate of tax on output supplies. Now, what does this mean? This means that your inputs are at higher rate, but your output supply is at lower rate, which is resulting in accumulation of credit. And if such a credit gets accumulated, then you are eligible for refund under this proviso to Section 54.3. There is a formula prescribed under Rule 89.5. The formula, as you can see on the screen, is that there is a turnover of inverted rated supply of goods services. You multiply that by net ITC and you divide that by adjustable total turnover. From the outcome, what you get, you subtract the total tax payable on supply of inverted rated goods or services. And net ITC has been defined as ITC availed on inputs. So the dispute was that only ITC availed on inputs was included in net ITC and not on input services. Because what happens is that, when you have inverted rated supplies, you may have input services also, but those services are, for that, you are not eligible for a refund. Okay, so we'll see that how the jurisprudence came out and how this matter reached to the Supreme Court. There were two contrary judgments, one by Gujarat High Court in the case of VKC footsteps, where Gujarat High Court held that Rule 89.5 was ultra-virus, the parent section, which is Section 54. They said Section 54 does not carve out any exception. It allows refund of any accumulated input tax credit, and it does not restrict it to inputs alone. Whereas in Madras High Court, in case of trans-tunnel story, they held that no, there is what Section 54 provides is a restriction, and it restricts ITC refund, only accumulated ITC refund, only in respect of inputs, and input services is clearly excluded, and therefore there is no violation, and Rule 89.5 is intra-virus. There is no illegality in it. Now, this matter went to the Supreme Court, both sides, and there were multiple other matters which went to Supreme Court. And Supreme Court, after hearing all sides, they upheld the order passed by Madras High Court, and they reversed the order of VKC footsteps passed by Gujarat High Court. Supreme Court said that Section 54.3 should be read in plain terms. You cannot import any words. You cannot bring the legislative intent or the ultimate aim to neutralize or all the taxes. So that is like a utopian view, and which will eventually happen. But as on date, whatever legislature has drafted, that needs to be looked into, and only that can be seen. So they have said that the proviso to section 54(3) does not stipulate a condition that only if the tax on inputs is higher than tax on output supplies, then the refund would be eligible of all the accumulated input tax credit. Rather, the Supreme Court held that it is a restriction provided by through this proviso. A restriction has been provided in section 54(3), which restricts the refund of only accumulated credit on account of inputs. Also, they said that the judiciary cannot expand the boundaries. They cannot legislate. That is in the domain of parliament or legislature, and the courts cannot redraw the boundaries of any legal provision. Further, they also held that inputs cannot be said to include input services. The use of the term inputs in the proviso to section 54(3) should be seen only as inputs, and not, it cannot include input services within its ambit. Also, they said that the whatever the missing words as may be prescribed in rule 54(3) does not make any difference, because rules were framed under section 164, and therefore there is no ambiguity. And 164 clearly says that it is to give effect to all provisions of the act. Therefore, rule 89 gives effect to the provisions of section 54, and therefore there is nothing wrong in it. So now this brings us to a point, also important point. So first we'll tell you our view, and then we'll also tell you that where Supreme Court has given relief. In our view, we feel that what section 54(3) proviso provides is a condition for eligibility, and it does not state that it restricts. There is no restriction there that it is only the ITC accumulated on account of inputs that is available. However, because now it is the Supreme Court judgment that will prevail, and therefore the taxpayers must look into their inverted duty structure, and they must exclude the input services while claiming refunds. Another important aspect which came before Supreme Court was the formula under Rule 89(5), whether it was logical, whether there was an error, and there, because the formula, as we discussed a couple of slides back, it talks about input, it talks about net ITC, and net ITC, as I stated, includes only ITC on account of inputs. Whereas what is subtracted out of this is the tax liability on account of inverted rated supply of goods and services both. So what Supreme Court noticed is that while in the net ITC, the revenue is taking only ITC on account of inputs, but on the liability side, they are excluding the entire liability on account of inverted rated supply of goods as well as services. So this is a lopsided approach. They did not agree with the petitioner's assessee's claim, where they said that first input services should be allowed to be utilized from the accumulated ITC, and thereafter input should be utilized. They did not agree with the revenues contention also, government's contention also, that the formula is correct. But what they've said is that since the court itself cannot legislate on this or cannot struck down the formula based on this, so they advised the GST Council to reconsider the formula and devise a mechanism whereby it is not lopsided in view of revenue, and either certain percentage can be defined, that what percentage will be treated of inputs and what of input services. Like, or alternatively, some ratio can be decided, and then accordingly it can be utilized for deducting the amount of tax on inverted duty, inverted supply of goods or services. So next we come to some other case laws, very, very important case laws. This one again is on inverted duty structure. Now here what had happened is that there was this petitioner who was trading in IT goods. So it procured information technology related goods, it purchased those goods, and it was supplying those goods to certain specified nominated agencies which were eligible for certain exemption. So while inputs attracted, say, 18% rate, but the output, because of an exemption notification, attracted lower rate. And this again resulted in accumulation of credit. And pursuant to this, he filed a refund claim under section 54.3, which we just discussed in VKC. The authorities rejected the refund claim by saying they relied on a circular 135, para 3.2 of that circular said that those inputs which have been, the phrase inputs used in section 54.3 should have been utilized for manufacture and then supplied. And only then the refund is available. It is not available for cases involving pure trading. So what Guwahati High Court said is that this is erroneous interpretation, because section 54.3 does nowhere stipulates any such condition about manufacture, and it is only saying that tax on inputs is higher than tax on output supplies. In this case, because of exemption, the tax on inputs became higher and the tax on output, even if it was trading, was lower. And therefore, this was a case of inverted duty structure and refund was eligible. So they remanded the matter to authorities to compute refund. Next is, there are a couple of advanced rulings that we will discuss, and these are in relation to goods which are specifically customized for use in submarines. So in case of APAR Industries, this is a appellate authority for advanced ruling, Gujarat. They were supplying marine pressure and non-pressure tied cables, which were essential and integral for use in submarines. Now, submarines, because as we all know, are in water, and they require these extremely high pressure cables, and therefore these cables are especially designed for submarines, and without these cables the submarines cannot function. So by taking note of this particular aspect, the advanced ruling authority, appellate authority for advanced ruling, agreed with the petitioner that yes, these are to be classified like submarines as parts of submarine under heading 8908, and would attract 5% concessional rate of GST, which is applicable to submarines. Likewise, Exide Industry case, they were supplying batteries, especially designed batteries to submarines. Again, court noted that, advanced ruling authority noted, Maharashtra authority, that without batteries, the submarines cannot function because they do not have any source of power, underwater. So these batteries are very, very important and critical, and therefore these will get classified as parts of submarine and would attract 5% GST rate. So moving on, we discuss another important aspect, which is in the case which was decided by BG Shirke Construction by Advanced Ruling Authority of Maharashtra. Here what happened was, there was a registered office which was providing managerial and leadership support services to group companies as well as other units, sister concerns, subsidiaries, branches, different, within the same related, they were all related parties. Now, these group companies and other units were separately registered under GST. They were distinct persons, and therefore the supply of these managerial and leadership support services were held to be supplied within the meaning of Section 7 and were exigible to GST. However, what authority said is that since full ITC is available. Therefore, the valuation can be adopted in terms of Rule 28 of CGST rules.
Now, coming to the next ruling, this is a very interesting one. So, in the case of Kanhaiya Realty, from the manufacturer, retailers were purchasing specified units of hosiery goods. And when they purchased the specified units, the manufacturer was supplying goods like AC, refrigerator, in nature of promotional goods at nominal prices. So here the question arose that can manufacturer these supplies along with the hosiery items will qualify to be a mixed supply, and will ITC be available or not? So advanced ruling held that it's not a mixed supply because these are being supplied for separate prices. No single price was charged, and they are neither a composite supply because these supplies are not naturally bundled and are not supplied in conjunction with each other. So they held it to be a separate supply, attracting respective rate of tax. And as far as ITC is concerned, the authority held that these are being supplied at nominal charges, so they won't qualify to be a gift. And since they are not gifts, so Section 17(5)(h) of CGST Act doesn't bar any credit, and ITC is allowed. Now coming to the next ruling, in the case of Eastern Coalfield, basically here the recipient claimed ITC on invoices which were issued to him for the period January to March 2020. This supplier reported these invoices in his GSTR 1 and 3B of November 2020. Now these returns, these reported invoices got auto-populated in GSTR 2B in November 2020 on hit and trial basis, because this 2B got effective from January 1st, 2021. So here the recipient asked the question whether he can be denied this ITC on the ground of 16(2)(c), which mandates that the tax must be paid by the supplier to the government since the supplier belatedly reported these invoices. So here the authority held that 2B was made effective from January 2021 and it has no statutory force. Therefore, no credit can be rejected basis GSTR 2B, because under 2B it was shown as an ineligible credit. As far as the ITCs pertaining to these invoices is concerned, then such credit was awarded in violation to Rule 36(4), and no credit should be allowed. So this was being held. However, in our view, this is incorrect. Rule 36(4) of the CGST rules has no legal backing, and the amendment which was made in the recent Finance Act by inserting clause AA to Section 16 of CGST Act is not being effective yet. So considering these, the credit shouldn't be disallowed.
Thank you, Parul. Now, another important advanced ruling is on CSR, and almost all corporates have CSR responsibility. In this advanced ruling, what the authority did, they relied upon CSR policy rules, wherein they provide that activities they specifically exclude activities undertaken in pursuance of normal course of business from the purview of CSR. And by relying on this and then looking into Section 16, where ITC is allowed on goods services received in course or furtherance of business, the authority held that since the expenses incurred on CSR activities cannot be said to be received in normal course of business or furtherance, therefore ITC is not available. In our view, this is an incorrect advanced ruling for the reason that the CSR spend is a statutory liability of the company, and therefore ITC should be available. What CSR rules say is not binding on GST law, which allows credit in respect of statutory liabilities. Next is the Delhi CSTAT judgment. This is in the case where a petitioner had availed advance authorization prior to GST. It failed to completely fulfill the export obligation and therefore was required to pay CVD and SAD, the benefit of which was taken on import of duty-free inputs. So it was required in order to discharge the advance authorization, redeem the advance authorization, it had to pay CVD SAD after coming into force of GST. Now, by that time, since Senvet credit rules were no more there, the petitioner could not have taken the Senvet credit of CVD SAD so paid to redeem the advance authorization. And eventually, it filed a refund claim under Section 11B of Central Excise Act, read with Section 142, subsection 3 of CGST Act, which permits not only sanction of such claims, but specifically provides that all such refund claims should be sanctioned in cash. So the original authority and appellate authority rejected the claim of the petitioner, and therefore this matter traveled to the tribunal. Tribunal held that the refund is available because under section 11B, and it is available in cash because this, after payment of CVD SAD, the advance authorization has been regularized. All those inputs had GST not come in place, all those credits would have been available. The petitioner was eligible for Senvet credit of the same. Now, because these were paid after GST, neither the credit is available nor the petitioner could have taken it, because these were not reflected in the returns. He could not have taken in Tran 1 also. Therefore, refund is duly available. So with this, we come to an end, but we will give some highlights of what the assessees, what the companies should do. So first and foremost, they must timely file the duty credit scripts. As Parul rightly mentioned, that December 31st, 2021 is the last date and no late cut is allowed. Therefore, whether it is SEIS, whether it is MEIS, whatever claims have to be filed for availing these scripts must be filed before 31st December 2021. Second important point, which I discuss about the Supreme Court ruling. Therefore, 90 days would expire on December 31st, 2021. Therefore, if there are any appeals, any applications, any suit, anything needs to be filed, that must be done before December 31, 2021, unless the law itself allows you additional time. Another important point is that the taxpayers must assess if they are exporting services and their SEIS claim is getting hampered because of the notification that I discussed during our roundup, then they must evaluate whether to challenge the notification before the writ court. Another important point is based on the VKC judgment of Supreme Court. If you have inverted duty structure, then you must evaluate it and exclude the input services while working out the refund amount. Last but not the least, the taxpayers, Parul discussed the ruling in the case of Kanhaiya, where the item which was given as promotion at nominal rate was allowed, ITC was allowed. So all the discount incentive schemes must be revalidated and evaluated to see the GST perspective. If it is a free item and you have an adverse position you have taken, maybe you can have a nominal value so that ITC is available. And therefore, you must relook at all your schemes, discount schemes and incentives. Thank you very much. We wish you all the very best, and the season, festive season is coming. So all the very best. Also take care, stay healthy, take care of your health, and we wish you all the very best. Thank you for joining in such large numbers. Thank you, Parul, for such a wonderful session. Yeah, thank you.